Hello guys, welcome to Malik034 channel. This is Mallikarjun. This is a continuation series of videos on the installation and configuration of grid infrastructure and the rack database creation. Where in our previous videos we saw virtual box setup and OEL installation, OEL 5, OEL 6, OEL 7 and OEL 8, and also we have seen creating users and directories, and also we have seen DNS name resolutions and forward zone and reverse zone configuration. Now we will clone the VM and we'll create the shared disk on that particular VMs. If you see VirtualBox setup, all this we have seen, and installation of OEL and custom partitions, everything we have seen, and creating the users and directories we have seen, and setting up the bash profile we have forgot. So we will see this bash profile for the grid and the Oracle users. So I already started OEL 6 machine, OEL 6 node 1. So if you see my server is already up here. So I'm going to create a bash profile for grid user. Grid user I already set Oracle base, Oracle home, and Oracle SID. And this Oracle base path and path, LD library and class path are going to same. So I'm just going to copy this entire thing and I'm going to paste it inside my grid user bash profile. Grid ls-ltra. There's a bash profile for grid user vi dot bash underscore profile, and you can add at the end of the line. Okay, so similarly I do have the Oracle profile like Oracle base, Oracle home, Oracle SID, and base path, path, and LD library and class path, right? So I'm just going to copy this one and going to switch to Oracle user and ls-ltra. There is a bash profile here, and I'm going to vi that bash profile, and I'm going to add it at the end of the line. Right, so our bash profiles are ready. So next, creating users are already done and directories are all created. So and also forward zone, reverse zone, everything is configured, and we will clone the VL and we will change the IP addresses and we'll create the shared disk. So if I do cat slash etc host, it's just a revision. I can say public IP address, private IP address, virtual IP address, and scan IP address. Everything is ready. So I'm just going to just going to change this one. Instead of 0, I'll make it 128, 129, and 128, 129, 130, 131, 140, 150, 160, and then I will clone this VM and then we'll create the shared disks. Okay, so I'm just going to edit this host files and I'll make it instead of 0, I'll make it 1, 1, 128, 128, 130, 131, 140, 140, 150, 160. So all done. I'll save it and service network restart. Okay, so once my network restarted. Okay, so we have set our public IP address 1.128, 1.129 at private IP address 2.128 and 2.129 and virtual IP address 1.130 and 1.131 and scan 1.140, 150 and 160. So if I check my cat etc resolve.conf, so everything is going to resolve through my 1.128, that is node 1. Node 1 is going to act as my DNS server, and if I do cat slash etc named.config, and I have my forward zone and I have my reverse zone, and also I did this listen port 30 and this allow query, everything is set. So if I go where named and check my forward zone, and all forward zone is set now here 128, 129, 140, 150, 160. And also similarly if I check my reverse zone, reverse zone also is set 128, 129, 140, 150, 160. So everything is set now. So if I do ns lookup node 1, it is getting resolved, and ns lookup node 2 also getting resolved, and OEL6 hyphen scan, and my scan is also getting resolved. Okay, so now we are all set as per my document. Everything is set. So now we need to clone, and we need to change the IP address, and also we need to create the shared disk. So I'm going to shut down my VM, and I'm going to clone it OEL6 node 1, and I'll clone it as a OEL6 node 2. So you can right click on this one and clone, and you can make it OEL6 node 2, and then go to the same location where your OEL6 node 1 is created, software OEL, and you can see here OEL6 node 1. So I'm going to create one directory called OEL6 node 2, and then save it. So OEL6 node 2, and select this folder, and you can select this include all network adapter and MAC address, and then click on next, and clone. So it will take few 1 or 2 minutes to do a complete clone, and at this meantime, okay, it will not allow me to create a shared disk. So let it get complete, and then we'll start with our creating the shared disk, and we can attach those shared disk to this node 1 and node 2. Okay, so my OEL6 node 2 is ready. I'll just bring it up. Node 1 and node 2 is ready. So now we will create our shared disk. So for that you need to go to this virtual media manager, and then create your shared disk. So what I will do, I'll create 10 GB of 6 disks, or you can go ahead with the 20 GB of 3 disks. Anything is fine. So I'll go with the 20 GB of 3 disks. Just click on this create, and select this VDI, and select this fixed size, and make it give any name under OEL shared. So I'm going to create disk 1 with 20 GB, create, which will take a few seconds. Will create a 3 disk of 20 GB each, disk 1, disk 2, disk 3 of each 20 GB, and also we will create uh, 10 GB disk, 3 disk we can create a 10 GB for Rico. So disk 1 is ready. So we will make it as a shareable and apply. And similarly we can create a disk 2, dynamic or fixed allocation, and I can make it a disk 2 and of 20 GB size, and create. This disk 1, disk 2 and disk 3 act as my data disk group, 20 GB, 20 GB, 20 GB, around 60 GB, and when it is go with the normal redundancy it become 30 GB, and again we will create a 3 more disk of 10 GB each, disk 4, 5, 6, 10 GB each. So these 3 disks are going to be my Rico disk group, and again I'll make it as a shareable and apply, and I'll create one more for data disk group, fixed size, and I'll make it disk 3, and of 20 GB. Create. Okay, we are almost done with the data disk group disks, and we'll create a 3 more disk for record disk group. Okay, done. So I'll make it this disk 3 also shareable and apply, and then we'll create a 3 more for record disk group, fixed size, and I'll go with the disk 4 of 10 GB, or you can go with the 5 GB also fine. So whatever you feel. I'll go with the 10 GB, create disk. Okay, so I'll create one more VDI, next, fixed size, and I'll go with the disk 5, and again 10 GB, create. Okay, done. So I'll create one more disk, VDI, fixed size, and it's going to be disk 6, again 10 GB, create. Make sure all these disks are going to be shareable, because you are going to share this disk between node 1 and node 2. Okay, done. So I'll just re-verify it. Disk 1 is shareable, disk 2 is shareable, disk 3 is shareable, disk 4 is normal, I'll make it shareable, apply. Disk 5, again it's normal, I'll make it shareable, apply. And disk 6, again it's normal, I'll make it shareable and apply. Fine. Look, all six disks are shareable now, so I'll just close it and I'll go back again. I'm going to add all those six disks on this node 1 and node 2. So go to settings on node 1 and go to storage and go to this SATA, and just add hard disk here, and you can select all those disks. Disk 1, disk 2, disk 1, disk 2, disk 3, disk 4, disk 5, disk 6. Right, so disk 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Again, what I'll do, I'll just add on this OEL6 node 2 as well. Go to settings, storage, this controller SATA, click, add this disk here, disk 1, disk 2, disk 3, disk 4, disk 5, disk 6. Right, disk 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Already, so now I'll boot both the machines, node 1. For right now, I'll start only node 1, and I'll not start the node 2. I'll start node 2 later, because my intention is now I need to format those 6 disks. Let's wait for a few seconds. Let this node 1 come up. Okay, so we got the screen. We'll log in as a root. Okay, so we logged in, and we will verify our disk. So whatever you disk add in your OEL Linux server, everything is going to come under your /dev. So if you do /dev llsd star, if you can see here, SDA is a disk which is added during the OS installation, and that SDA is formatted as a SDA1, SDA2 and SDA3. So there are three partitions created on this SDA1 disk, and all that partition you can see it etc fs tab. If you can see here, like one will be your root file system, one will be your boot file system, and one will be your swap. So if you do df-h, if you see here, dev sd3 is going to be your root file system, and dev sda1 is going to be your boot file system, and dev sd2 is going to your swap file system. So that is swap is not showing here, but if you can see fs tab here, your swap area will be here. That's a default partition which will get create when you are creating the root, when you are creating your OS. So as you can see here, SD star, if you do, you have one hard disk which has installed, which is inserted into this Linux box during the OS installation, and that disk is formatted as a SDA1, SDA2, and SDA3. This SDA1 is for root file system, and SDA3 is for boot file system, and SDA2 is for your swap file system. So now whatever 6 disk you have added, it will be here SDB, C, D, E, F, G. These are the 6 disk what you have added today. So, and also you can verify with this date and this size of the disk. Size of the disk, you can find it fdisk hyphen L. L is for list. If you do fdisk hyphen L, you will get all the details. You can see disk dev sdb, which is of 21.5 GB. That is whatever we created as a 20 GB, it has taken it as 21.5 GB. There will be some, I can say there's a byte mismatch between the actual size and the allocated size. So SDB1 is 21 GB. It means it's a 20 GB disk what I inserted, and SDF, it's a 10 GB disk what I created, and again SDE again 10 GB, and SDA is a root file system, I can say, that the initial disk which is inserted during the OS installation. And this SDA is again, as I said, it is partitioned as SDA1, SDA2, and SDA3. If you can see here, SDA2 is for Linux swap, and SDA3 is for my boot, and SDA1 is for my root file system. And this is the disk you inserted, and this is the size of the disk, and these are the sectors. It will say starting sector and ending sector. It means it is, this disk is already formatted. And if you see, if you observe this STE and SDF, it will just say my disk size, and there is no partition here. It will just say SDD also 20 GB, and it's just a disk, starting cylinder and ending cylinder, and there's no partition on that. Similarly SDG also, there's no partition on that. So that you can find it SD star, it will say SDB, C, D, E, F, and G. These are the 6 disks are not partitioned. If I partition SDB, it will become SDB1. If I partition SDC, it become SDC1. So to partition that, you need to type fdisk partition disk, and you need to give the path dev sdb. Sdb is my disk. It is under dev slash sdb, and then command m is for the help. And to create a partition, you just need to enter n is for new partition, and then P is for primary partition, and E is for extended partition. Whenever you are creating your first partition, it is always going to be primary partition. Enter P, primary partition, and give P, and then just enter. And the partition number is going to be 1. That's the first partition I'm creating. And you always go with the default cylinder. Default cylinder is default start with the first cylinder. I just already selected as a default. You just give enter, and default it will take maximum number, like entire whatever 20 GB entire thing. If you want to allocate, you just give default enter, or else if you want to give only sizes, you can mention 10 GB or 20 GB or 15 GB. You just mention, either you can mention in terms of size, or you can mention in terms of cylinder. So it has 1 to 2610 cylinders. So I just started with the first cylinder. I just want to use all the cylinders. So default it is maximum cylinder 2610. It's already selected maximum cylinder. I'll just give enter, and then the partition got created. To save the partition, you have to mention w is for save. So partition is created. So similarly, if you do now sd star, sorry, ll sd star, if you can see here, sdb was the initial disk and it is partitioned as a sdb1, and now I'll partition for sdc. So uh, fdisk dev sdc, just mention the original partition, original disk name, and then again go with the creating the new. N is for new and P is for primary partition, and partition number is 1, and I'll go with the default cylinder, and I'll go with the default cylinder, and I'll save it. W is for save, and then I'll go with if I do ll sd star, if you observe here, the sdc is become sdc1. It means sdc disk has partitioned as a sdc1. So similarly, I'll go with std, and new partition and primary partition, partition number 1, and go with the default in the first cylinder, and I'll go with the default last cylinder, and W is for save. Similarly, if I verify, SDD become SDD1, and I'll do it for EFG, SDE, and new partition, primary partition, partition number 1, default cylinder, and W is for save. And similarly, I'll go with F, and new partition, primary partition, partition number 1, first cylinder default, last cylinder default, and W is for save. Similarly, I'll go with for G, and new partition, primary partition, partition number 1, first cylinder default, second last cylinder default, and W is for save. If I do FLL SD star, if you see, all disks are partitioned. My SDB is partitioned as SDB1, SDC is partitioned as SDC1, SDD become SDD1, SDE become SDE1, and SDF become SDF1, SDG become SDG1. So my all disks are got partitioned. 3 disks for data and 3 disks for Rico. We create we partition the disk. So we cloned the VM node 1 as a node 2, but I need to start node 2 now, and then I need to change the IP address and the host name. So now I'll do it. I will shut it down, this particular partition. So the other point is, since these are the shared disk, I added between the node 1 and also I added in the node 2. So I did a partition on the node 1. Automatically when I start my node 2, all these partitioned are already available in the node 2, because these disks are shared between the both the servers. So that I'm going to show you now. I'll just shut it down, this node 1, and then I'll start this node 2. And once I go under my slash dev and then check for all this disk, already all disk will be partitioned, because the disks are shared between this node 1 and node 2. So I no need to separately do all the partitions here. So we'll wait for a few minutes. So let it come up my node 2, and you need to go to slash etc sysconfig network. In that file you need to change your host name, because when you clone it, the host name is going to be still node 1, so you need to make it as a node 2, and all the IP address will be from the node 1, so you need to change it to node 2 IP addresses. So these are the two important things whenever you clone your VM. Change the host name. If it is a OEL 7 and OEL 8, you can use nmcli command. And if it is OEL 6 or OEL 5, you can go to network file and then change your host name, and also change your IP addresses and verify ifconfig. And then all the IP addresses will come up properly, and then also do ns lookup. Okay, so my server came up. I'll log in with the root word. Okay, so even though it says here OEL6 node 2, but at the command prompt, my host name is going to be node 1. If you see here, OEL6 node 1. So it is not yet changed. So to change this host name, slash etc sysconfig network is the file, slash etc sysconfig network is the file. Go here, if you see here, right, host name OEL6 node 1. So I'm just going to change it. Escape I'll make it node 2. My host name is got changed. I need to reboot the server, then only it will take into effect. So that's the first thing. And the second thing, you need to change the IP address. Go to system and preferences and go to network connection and Ethernet 0. You can make it IPv4 128 is my node 1 and 129 is my node 2. Just apply it here, and Ethernet 1 my private IP address, and 2.128 is my node 1 and 2.129 is my node 2. And similarly this Ethernet 2 is for internet purpose. It's a dynamic DHCP IP address, no need to change here. So once you change that one and do service network restart, okay, so all my IP address came up. If we do ifconfig and 129 1.129 2.129, and this is my internet dynamic DHCP IP address. So IP addresses are fine, and I will do the reboot now. So to reflect this node, what I'll do, I'll just reboot this node, and also I will start my node 1 parallelly. Node 2 is rebooting, and parallelly I'll start this node 1, and then we will uh, verify this uh, NS lookup and scan resolutions and ping between each other. So all will verify it here, and then both the nodes will be ready for grid infrastructure installation. So the next, my next session is going to be creating Oracle ASM disk groups, and all the ASM disks. I'm going to configure my Oracle ASM libraries, and configure all my say disks for grid infrastructure installation. And I'll start with the rack pre-checks, and then installation of my clusterware in my next session. So let's verify. Let's do this final verification of both the nodes. Okay, node 2 is ready. Just log in with the node 2. Okay, node 1 also ready. I'll log in for node 1 also. Okay, node 2 is ready. Here I'm at node 2 now. So I'll open the terminal and I'll check it. See, you can see reflected here, right? Node 2. If I do host name, host name. If you see OEL6 node 2 localdomain.com, and then if I do ifconfig, and if you see here 1.129 2.129, and if I do cat etc hosts, and 128 129 node 1 node 2, and 2.128 2.129 private IP address node 1 node 2, and this VIPs and the scan IPs. So everything is set on this node 1. And also if I go to dev and LLSD star, and if you see here SDA1, 2, 3, SDB, SDB1, SDC, SDC1, SDD, SDD1, SDE, SDE1, SDF, SDF1, SDG, and SDG1. So all the disks are already partitioned here. So if I do fdisk-l, if you see all the disks are formatted now. Earlier only this SDA is formatted, and rest of the disk STB, SDC are used to give me only this much output, and there is no boot or this SDB1 sliced disk, starting cylinder, ending cylinder. It will not be there. Now you can see all this SDB is there, SDC1 is there, and SDD1 is here, and SDE1 is here. So all disks are partitioned. So node 2 is set now. So but only thing is you need to modify your etcresolve.conf. So etcresolve.conf, I already have this output. I'll just put it here. I'll just save it, and service named restart. Okay, before that I will just go to node 1, and then I'll verify node 1 also. node 1. Okay, node 1 cat etc hosts 1.128, 1.129, 2.128, 2.129, and virtuals and scans, everything is fine. ifconfig, ifconfig 1.128, 2.128. Okay. Yeah, node 1 also fine. And if I do host name is also fine, node 1. And again, I need to copy my resolve.config file. Resolve, I have a backup file already taken. Okay, so if I do cat slash etc resolve.conf, okay, it's all set now. Okay, so just I modified my resolve.conf because always your resolve.config file should have this name server, and that to point to my node 1 192.168.1.128. And if I check on node 2 also, cat etc resolve.conf, see, name server is going to be 192.168.1.128 because all the IP address has to resolve through this node 1, because node 1 is going to act as my DNS server slash etc hosts. And I'm at my node 2. I'm just do ns lookup node 1. So node 1 is getting resolved, and ns lookup node 2 is getting resolved, and I'll do my OEL6 scan. My scan is also getting resolved. Similarly, if I go to node 1 and do cat etc hosts, and if I do ns lookup node 1, ns lookup node 1 is getting resolved, ns lookup node 2 also getting resolved, and OEL6 scan. So scan is also getting resolved. So now I am set, my both node 1 and node 2 are ready. So in my next session we will create our ASM disks, and then we'll create our grid infrastructure installation in my next video. Thank you guys.